Hello and welcome to this video, which is about the structure for the final submission, especially the last part with the conclusion. So here in this slide, I'll try to give you the general structure that the conclusion should have. I think that most of your thesis will have a contribution with at least this point. So there are a few, like for example, this one, which might be optional, but I think besides that, you need to include all of them. So we start with the brief summary. It's probably the first paragraph of your thesis, where it's a bit similar to the purpose. Like you remind the reader what is the objective of your whole thesis, what is the research question. Probably you can also bring that up, and then state what did you do to solve that question, what or to reach the research objective to accomplish that. So it's a brief summary again. Is You don't need to go into details, but basically saying like this was the objective, this was the research question that we aim to answer, and to answer it, we did it this. We did a survey, we find a database, we analyze reports, or we did interviews, or you combine different things, we analyzed in this way. It's basically one paragraph, just introduction. Then the next point is to, again, summarize your theoretical contributions. You have the theoretical contributions in depth in the discussion chapter, the previous chapter, where you discuss with the theory your findings, differences, similarities, and you expand the current knowledge from the literature with what you found. And here is much more simpler. It's basically saying our thesis contributes to this specific conversation in the literature. It can be, for example, the current discussion on contingency theory and how nowadays within technology or within sustainability, it seems more complicated that companies just react to external contingencies. So we explored that and we found this and that. So again, it's a bit repetitive, but it's a kind of very concise summary of your theoretical contributions. Then some of you might have methodological contributions where maybe you had a kind of methodological innovation. For example, some of you who use two methods, for example, something quant and something qual, that can be a possibility. Or if you did, even if it's just one method, but you have something innovative in there, like how you conducted the interviews or how you conducted the survey. If there is some kind of innovation, also discuss that in here. So you also contribute methodologically, but again, this is not necessary for everyone. Think if you want to talk about it. The other thing that is necessary to discuss are practical contributions. So this theoretical contribution is to literally say which conversation in the literature you are discussing. How do you expand the theoretical knowledge? This is much simpler. This is basically from practitioner perspective, from business management perspective, what can a manager learn from your thesis? So, or a business owner or a manager, shareholder or stakeholder discussed, I don't know, 2 or 3 points. It doesn't need to be that complicated. Similar to that, and this is a bit new in the thesis, now we also need to discuss societal contributions. So how your findings from your thesis can kind of impact society in general. Maybe you can highlight policy making that can be relevant, but maybe you can also highlight like if the findings from your thesis are implemented in businesses or are implemented in organizations, then that might lead to a societal impact. Maybe discuss the direct impacts and indirect impacts as well. Again, maybe 1, 2 paragraphs. And finally, limitations, mostly methodological limitations. And so, for example, maybe you could only interview, I don't know, a certain number of people, and that might be a limitation. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it means that it limits the kind of robustness of your study. Another possibility is that maybe you couldn't do a follow-up, or maybe you couldn't study another context to compare. So highlight a few things. Remember, limitations are not that it's wrong. Limitations is just I couldn't do more, but still I could answer to my research question. So be careful in there, like try not to frame them as weaknesses, frame them just as limitations. And then for future research, based on those limitations, say what would you do with more resources, with more time. So the reader makes sure that it's not like it's not your fault, or it's not that you don't have the skills to do it. It's just you didn't have the resources to do it, and you plan on possibility of doing it late, or someone else can take over. So think like if you could do a PhD with research funds with 4 years to do whatever you want, what would you do? Again, I think similar to limitations, 2 or 3 future research ideas. And all of this is relevant because in the rubric, they are going to grade this. It is it is a bit tricky to show you the rubric for the conclusion, because in the rubric is kind of embedded in the discussion, which is a bit strange in my view, but that's how they grade it. So look, even here it says analysis, discussion, conclusion. But the first point, interprets and discusses results, is more like the discussion, chapter 5, but draws conclusions, I think, is also part of the conclusion. So take a look at what they ask. Then discussion of interpretations, uh, of course, that's the discussion, but including limitations, that is part of the conclusion, limitations and future research. Potential for future research, that is clearly in the conclusions. Contributions to theory and practice, it's here, here and here. And also societal contribution. And also, I think they ask for this contribution in terms of your discussion, that it's clear that you have a theory contribution. So those are the instructions for the conclusion. I believe that all of you have a very standardized conclusion. I don't find any group who needs to write something very different. Maybe probably only the methodological. Some of you have an innovation in there, which is optional. As you can see from the rubric, there is no need to write a methodological contribution. But if you have it, also include it in there. So I think that if the theoretical contributions are clear, the conclusion is easy to write. Future research is easy to write, limitations easy to write, societal, yes, practical contributions, very easy. Methodology, it depends if you have it theoretical. If it is clear from the discussion, it's easy to write, and the summary is easy to write. So maybe you only need time. I don't think it's like a huge intellectual exercise, but spend some time just writing it. Sometimes people like to read the conclusion at the beginning. So maybe this can be the first thing someone is going to read. So also pay attention to that. But those are the instructions. I hope you they are fine. You find them useful.